Hello lovely people, I'm Catherine and welcome to this Friday's video, and we're now in the slot which would normally have the slow journaling video in it, my Kate the Brave journal, which is here. I've decided to not retire her but to just give her a rest for a while, because I felt the last couple of times that I've been working on her that I've been kind of doing it for the sake of it, and that I know that happens sometimes to all of us with projects. It's not so much that we lose interest in them, well I suppose it is a bit that we lose interest, but they don't speak to us in the same way, and I usually find that they will speak to me again in the future, but rather than push myself to work on it, and I'm hoping, I'm sure you'll forgive me, I thought I would just give her a rest. So what I'm proposing instead is on the Fridays in between the Park Home Life, so there'll be Park Home Life still every other Friday. On the Fridays in between, where I've been doing the slow journaling, I'm going to work through some of my works in progress, my whips, a little bit. So I've got a big mountain here to show you. Several reasons really. One is that I've got exhibitions coming up next year. It's my group's exhibiting year, and there's two quite large pieces here on the go that I want to get finished for that. The other thing is I've got a project that I need to complete by this September for a group retreat with my slow stitch group, that I need to get on with, and other than that, there's the Coverlet of Comfort that many of us are working on, and there'll still always be the Wednesday dedicated video, and there won't be anything about it in this video that you need, you know, so if you're, well, if you don't watch the Fridays you won't be listening, but what I'm saying is Wednesday's Coverlet of Comfort video will be enough for you if you're following that project. But all I'm thinking is here I may now and then, if I've done more stitching since Wednesday, just show you what I've been doing, and it will probably just be more of the same, or maybe even do a little bit of that extra stitching with you here. I hope that all makes sense. So the first thing I'm going to show you is actually not these smaller things that I've got on the top here, but it's this large log cabin piece, and this is just a section of it that I've just taken down because it's what I'm currently working on. So I've done a little bit of wobbly handheld of the whole thing hanging up pinned to my curtain rail, so I'll insert that now and tell you a little bit more about it. Okay, here's my log cabin work in progress. I have shown it to you before, but anyway, some of you may be new, and just to refresh your memories and mine, it's pieced, the log cabins are all pieced on my machine and joined together, and I've now joined them into sections, so they're in 1, 2, 3, 4 sections, although eventually it will be all joined into one big piece, and I'm now slow stitching, doing slow stitch work on each section, and I'm doing it in that sectional way so I haven't got the whole great big thing to you know, wrangle at the same time. So I'll just zoom in. Sorry, I've got it hanging in the window so the light's not great. I can hopefully brighten it up when I edit. So this section here is all stitched already, and so is the square section there with the blue on. This section here isn't stitched at all except for the little white square in the middle, and then the final one that's hanging there that's looking a bit sticky outy and sticky inny. Sorry, I'm just negotiating the furniture. I've only just started stitching, so you see there's some red there around that little red square, and there's some more red up there at the top there, and actually there's a threaded needle in it even. So it will all end up being stitched in my usual restrained manner. I'm being sarcastic in case you didn't realise. This much. It's got a bit of a crease in it, but quite heavy stitching. Mostly just straight running stitch back and forth. Some overcast stitch, some knots, French knots here and there, some little crosses. I'll just show you the stitching on this as well. And then it will all get joined together, and then I may or may not back it At the moment it looks like that on the back. I probably will because of the raw seams. I don't know, I'll see. But this is destined for an exhibition next year, which feels like a long way away, but I do have to, you know, it takes quite a lot of time, as I'm sure many of you know, all the stitching. So that is one work in progress that I need to get on with. Okay, so this is the section that I'm working on, like I said, and you see I've got a threaded needle in it. I often do that, leave a threaded needle in. Obviously you have to be careful if you've got children and pets, but you know, this is quite safe. I keep it somewhere safe where the animals can't get at it. But then it's easy to pick up and just do a few stitches rather than having to, you know, find your thread, find your needle and so on. But I do need to get on with the stitching on this because, as you saw, I'm doing quite a lot of stitching. This piece I've only just started, and there's another whole great big section that I haven't started at all, the slow stitching. So I might use these Fridays, these every other Fridays, to do some stitching on this with you and talk about it, and you know, talk about my thoughts behind the message in this piece and all that kind of thing, because I think that might be interesting for you. But also it's certainly helpful for me because you have these things going around in your brain, but to actually talk about them kind of helps with me anyway, solidify my thoughts, or you know, find my thought process. So that will be one of the things. So let's put that to one side. The next large piece for the exhibition, I'm not sure I can get it all in. I started this a few years ago. It's actually in two parts. This, I'll show you this part first. This is its background. And I certainly won't be able to show you all of it, but I'll show you enough so that you get an idea. So this is a large square piece of sheet, and I've done quite wide cloth weaving on it. See, quite wide strips, sort of 3 inches apart or so, and it's just the cloth weaving. And I'm now background stitching it. So what I mean by that is I'm just using the same neutral colour palette to just do rows and rows and rows of running stitch, sort of cantha style, like the cantha quilting stitch. So you get this lovely rippled effect. But this is very much texture, and then over the top of that stitching I'll do more sort of statement fancy stitching. So I've done one side, I think, so I've got 3 more sides of that to go, and it's only around the edges. The middle is just a blank sheet, so that will be a large square. I think it's about 4 feet or so square, and then onto that, when this is all stitched, or when it's, you know, when it's background stitched, this is the centerpiece of it, which is, actually I think I'm going to switch to handheld, so I'm going to go and do some handheld of it. Okay, so I've pinned it up there over the log cabin, so ignore the log cabin sticking out behind. The piece I'm showing you is a circle. It's about 2 feet across, maybe a bit more, 26 inches, something like that. And it began with 4 9 patches. So you see where the red is, and actually it began with this 4 patch. This is just 4 patches joined together, and this is rust and tea printed cloth, and there was a little shape in it that reminded me of the top of a heart. Here, it's actually upside down, but you see the heart shape. So I started stitching seed stitch around the edge, and then I started doing some French knots, and I didn't like the French knots, so I went to take them out. But if you've ever tried to unpick French knots, you'll know it's very difficult, and so a lot of the threads remained, and when the threads were laying on the surface of the cloth, I really liked the look of the straggly ends, so I stitched in lots more straggly ends. So now it's kind of like a bleeding heart type affair, if you see what I mean. So that's become the centerpiece of this much larger work. That was its small beginnings with this little by accident heart-shaped print on my bit of tea-dyed cloth here. So I then made that 4 patch into a 9 patch. Actually, that's not a 4 patch, that's just 1 patch. Now I look at it again, sorry. So that was 1 large patch, so I added these
5 other patches to it to give the illusion of a 9 patch, if you like. And then I made 3 other 9 patches. 1, 2, 3, like that, and I've couched circles on them. I've done my usual minimal stitching, and then I join them together with this cross shape. And the whole theme of this is circles, circling around. I keep coming back to circles. Monday's Mixed Media Journal was circles, if you watch that. There's some resist dyeing, so that you clamp something onto the cloth and then dye it so it leaves the circle behind. And this is all eco-print and tea dyed, including this silk chiffon. I don't know if you can see. There's silk chiffon over the top, which I've left raggedy, because I think when I stitched that to the background that I showed you, I want it to kind of have a halo effect. But yeah, I really need to work on this more. I need to get the background stitching done on the big square that I showed you, and then get this attached to it, and, you know, kind of come up with the fancy stitching to complete that piece. So that's another whip. So I'll go back to my desk now. Okay, so this is my coverlet of comfort, and in Wednesday's video I did the convent stitch in the centre of this little star. So I just wanted to show you that I have gone on since then and done convent stitching in the other centres of the other 3 stars, and I'm really pleased with how that's looking. And I did as well here in the others start combining the strands of the different shades of gold, like I talked about on Wednesday, because I was using threads out of my Tangley nest, so I didn't have a large amount of one colour of gold, and so I was stitching with 3 strands. I took one of each strand of 3 different shades and combined them in my needle, so it looks much more blendy. And I'm really pleased with how those came out. So I won't talk any more about that, but because, you know, next Wednesday's video I'll share with you my next lot of plans for stitching on that. And the other thing I've done is I've finished all the French knots and feather stitch on my March section. So I just wanted to show you that. And I did, like I talked about, go over the corner of my log cabin here. And yeah, I just really love the way that looks. I hope you can see my fancy stitching. So that's, for now, finished stitching wise. I might add more as we go along, but for now it's finished. I also love the way it looks against the different colours. So here it's going across the dark eco print, and then here on this little scrap of my daughter's lacy skirt, and how it's combining with the embroidery that was on the skirt. And here there's Auntie Lily's pillowcase underneath, and here it is against the red of my granny's shawl. So yeah, really, the French knots became something of a chore, I have to say, but because I was really loving the way it was looking, that kept me going, and I managed to get that finished actually yesterday evening. So that's my comfort of coverlet, coverlet of comfort. What else have I got? And also related to the coverlet of comfort, I have got in this rice bag the Stitch Meditation scroll that I've been making with the scraps from the coverlet, and it's now pretty, I haven't finished all the fancy stitching on it, it's all basted, but it's pretty full, so I think I will start another one with the scraps. And what I'm doing is I'm keeping only the teeny tiny scraps, and the bigger scraps are going back into, I've got this project basket, and this is some of the cloths I've been using in my coverlet of comfort, if I want to come back to them again, you know, in future months. That's actually getting pretty full, but you know, but in there I've got this little bowl where I just put the teeny tiny bits. So this, oh sorry for that's my butterfly ring. Like my butterfly ring? Clanging on the bowl there. So all these little bits need to be basted onto a scroll, because I really like the idea of having some scrolls to use the tiny weeny bits. Some of those are a bit big to be in there actually, I might get some out. So that's another project. And I've got this as well, which I haven't worked on for a long time. This is the cloth I eco-printed from the woods here when I first moved here. And this I've done quite a lot of stitching on. I think you've seen most of this before. So I've stitched all of this, and I'm thinking this might also, I might submit it for the exhibition next year as well.
as an object, you know, so I'll have wall hangings but also physical objects, 3D objects. So I need to do more work on that, so I might do some of that with you. I think that might be interesting to some of you. Oh sorry, I just head-butted you. I'm actually standing up so I can see what you can see, so I can make sure I don't go out of frame. Yeah, the way I respond to marks in the cloth, I think that's something that's come up here and there. People have asked, how do you know what to stitch where? So I thought that might be an interesting thing for me to talk about going forward when I work on that. And then the other thing I mentioned, the little books, the book pages. The group that I'm a part of, which is a subset largely, there are some of us that aren't in the wider group that I'm the current chairperson of, joint chair. We're having a retreat in September. There are 10 of us, and we're each making 10 slow stitch pages, and then at the retreat we'll each give everybody one of our pages and keep one. So we'll end up with 10 pages, one made by each person in the group, and then during the retreat we'll assemble them into a book. So I've got my little stack here. So this one is completed. I've shown you it in a Park Home Life already. My theme is circles. On each one I'm going to couch a red circle, and I've got this red ball of yarn somewhere, which I've now misplaced. I've got a red ball of yarn somewhere. I put it in here. Sorry. No, anyway, I'll find it. It must be somewhere. So I've made this one, which was, sorry, I keep headbutting you. This was cloth weaving, and then I did the running stitch both ways all over it, and then I've couched on this red circle, so that's one of my pages. And I'm kind of bearing in mind the person I intend it for as I stitch. So I had someone in mind when I was stitching that, and that for me is, you know, part of the slow stitch as well, you know, the mindfulness of working. It's not necessarily that it resembles them in any way, or, you know, it's just the person that I intended this for, and I'm keeping a little note somewhere because I haven't put a name on it. There's the back. Love a backstory. I'm using as a foundation, there are these net curtains hanging here, and they are Polly cotton, but they're lovely and soft and thin, so they're a nice foundation. And this is the second one that I've finished the background stitching, more or less, and now I want to couch a red circle onto that. So this is obviously a log cabin, and I anticipate excuse me, that each of the 10 will be a different background, a different technique or whatever, but they will all be unified by having the red circle. So for me that's representative of you know, all of us are different within the group, but we all have a lot which we have in common. Obviously our love of slow stitch, but you know, other things as well, and that we're unified by this red circle of love. So that was my thinking behind that. So there's one finished, one getting on for finished, and then I've got 8 more, and this is what I do if I've got a project, well, that's what I try to do, is I've got 8 more background squares pre-prepared. And I've got my bento box rice bag here ready, and I'm going to keep all of that in there with the red wool when I find it, and into that as well I'm going to put some scraps of cloth. And I've got this big basket here of stuff that Fred's been sleeping in, that I've been throwing stuff in. Some of it is from my Kate the Brave journal, but there's also, I mean, little bits like this that could be used in my slow stitch book, let's call it. So I'm going to go through that and pick out scraps that I think I can use, and also go through my other scrap basket in my little studio there and make sure I've got lots of scraps in here, and maybe put a little needle book and some threads and so on. So I've got that as a project bag that I can take with me if I go out somewhere, or you know, just grab it in the evening if I want to work on that. So I'm now spying these beads. Their holes aren't big enough for my dreads. They can stay on there. So that's something else I might work on with you. Oh, there it is. There's my red wool. It's just some red, it's actually alpaca, but it's lovely and soft, and it's a lovely shade of red. So that's what I'm using to couch on, left over from sock knitting. So I need to sort out some scraps and do that. This has got, well, I showed you that one. This has got Stitch Meditation Scrolls in progress, so this is just one that I basted of scraps, and this one I also want to work more on. This is all made of my dad's shirt. This is some shirts, silk shirts of his, and I haven't worked on this for a long time. It's got a little pin in it. And it's coming up to my dad's birthday, so I've been, I think about him all the time, but his birthday, it would have been the 21st of April, and that's next week, so yeah, I want to work some more on that. And I'm stitching that all with shades of blue. Blue was his favourite colour, as you can see by his choice of silk shirts, but I've stitched one red line through the middle, just as a kind of symbol of love. And so I've got this much basted. I've got lots more of these strips. Actually, that's cloth, they're woven onto there. Are they woven? Did I go both? Yes, I went both ways. So it's a very fine silk. And then the background was some sheet that I've dyed with indigo. You see my invisible basting on the back. So I laid the strips on lengthways and then wove shorter lengths through, and now I'm stitching that all together. And I've got on here as well, otherwise what happens is this lovely blue indigo dyed cloth that I'd intended for this, if it's not here with this, I'm liable to use it in something else because I'll forget what it was for or whatever. So that's why I like to keep it all together. And that one, as you can see, I'm working on a short length. But I've left a bit at the end there, and I've even left part of the weaving hanging, so I can then stitch another piece of the background to it, and I'll show you when I come to do that. I'll stitch that together just with a seam, and then press the seam open in such a way that the raw edges of the seam will then be hidden by the weaving of the silk. So when I've stitched this, I'll add another piece, do more cloth weaving and carry on. So my idea was to, for it to end up quite long. I think there's quite a few pieces on there. So that's another whip, work in progress. So yeah, so I hope that all sounds good to you. I know many of you, although you aren't interested in the journaling particularly, or you're not doing the journaling, watch and stitch with me. So I thought for those people this would be nice to sort of stitch together. You can work on either your coverlet of comfort or one of your own projects. And I can work on all these things that I have to get working on, and we can do that together. It will also give me an opportunity along the way to share some thoughts and feelings about how I create my kind of art pieces, in inverted commas, the two large wall hangings that I showed you in particular, and how I think about, because for me it's, Cloth Tales is the name of my channel, so it's about the cloth, but it's also about the tales that the cloth tells. And that has been for thousands of years, for women in particular, how they tell their stories through cloth and stitching, all over the world, in many, many cultures all over the world. So that will enable me to talk about my interpretation of that idea, how I tell my tales through cloth, and to share maybe some of my techniques with you that you may not know and you might find interesting, and that kind of thing. So I thought that from now on, every other Friday will be me working on something, whatever, and talking about it at the same time, and then maybe you can sit and stitch with me and maybe get some ideas, maybe just just be an observer, either's fine. So I hope that sounds like a plan. Many apologies if you will miss the slow journaling. I will come back to that at one point, but yeah, I just felt that I mentioned in a recent video, I think it was Monday's, about my analytics. It must be partly to do with that I'm thinking, well, maybe my focus on stitching has shifted too far away. But I'm absolutely not doing this to chase, better analytics. Absolutely not. That's not me at all, in any way, shape or form. It's probably in my mind because it's more to do with your engagement. So if you're not engaged with what I'm producing, then that makes me think again. But this is genuinely an authentic thing. I have been beginning to worry a little bit about deadlines for things, and I know that many of you are the same. Even if you don't have deadlines, you feel overwhelmed with the amount of projects, or you feel bad if you set a project to one side, you know, and all that kind of thing. So all those things in this space every other Friday I can talk about, and I shall respond to your comments. So, you know, if you have thoughts and feelings on the subject or things you want me to address, you can pop them in the comments here. I'll see what people are talking about in the Facebook group, you know, and give feedback where I can. So that's my plan. That's my plan. So I hope you're happy with that as a plan. And let's see where it takes us. I think what I'll do for the rest of this week's video is work on the slow stitch book project. So I'm going to go through this and pick out little scraps, and I thought of doing that off camera, but then I thought maybe you'd like to, you know, see that, because this is what happens, you know. I'm organised reasonably, but then you have a basket, and especially since I'm now working, I don't have a studio. Well, I've always worked all over the place because of hand stitching, but yeah, my main scrap baskets are in my studio. If I'm working in the living room, I throw things into this basket. So anyway, let's just go through it. So I'm just going to pick out the bigger pieces and set them to one side. That is gorgeous. That bit of linen, I've had that for years. I think I dyed that while camping with tea and rust, maybe 10 years ago, something like that. It's a bit of old linen from a skirt of mine. It's just lovely. Anyway, we're not going to go down memory lane with every little bit of cloth because we'll be here forever. So rust print, I'm just going to set them to one side, and then these will go back in my bundles. There's a video from somewhere last summer showing how I make my little bundles that I work from to keep my cloth under control. I will link to that down below. But basically what I do is similar cloths I put together, or even not even similar cloths, I just kind of make these little bundles. So when I've got a little stack, I'll show you. That's dyed with onion skins, I think, silk and oil. That's another bit of linen. So really I just want these tiny bits to use in my slow stitch, so I'm just going to, in my slow stitch book, so I'm just going to throw them into there. That's some tea dyed lace, so I'll put that separate, just got a feather in it. I'll put that separate. I also have these, I'm sure you do too, little pots and things all over the place that you throw random things in. Whoops, like thread that bounces across the desk. That's a bit of, I might keep that in here as well because that's a bit bigger, but I might want it. I may or may not put lace in some of them, but I'll keep the laces all separate for now. Oh, this needs to go in my Kate the Brave journal. Those are the leaves out of the bundle that I buried in the woods. So I'll put that with that. That's a bigger bit. Just have a bit of a sort out. Sometimes it does you good to have a bit of a sort out if you're feeling overwhelmed. For me, librarian that I am, having a little sort out, and it doesn't mean you have to sort out your whole collection of stuff, just a bit of it. It just kind of sorts out my brain at the same time. Those are some little scraps of wool dyed with onion skins. I have a separate tub for wool in my studio. That's also wool. Silk I'm putting in a separate pile, and this is just how I sort, you know. How you sort should really relate to how you work for it to be most useful to you. So there's not one size fits all. It's a smaller bit, so I'll put that in for my slow stitch book project. So it's worth having a think about how you work. And what I mean by that is I use someone who works colour coordinated, in which case you might want to sort all your cloths by colour. You know, so you have all your reds or your greens and so forth. Or I use someone that works more like me. You saw my coverlet of comfort just now. That's a bit of book spine, so that needs to go in my journal making box, or one of them. If you work, you know, in a more eclectic way, then that's how I work. So I have bundles, mixed bundles, because when you see the cloth all bundled together, This is all rust and tea print. It can inspire you. You know, you kind of get these combinations of colours and things that can inspire a theme in your actual work. So I mean, this is all rust and tea printed in here, but if you picked up a bundle and it had pink next to green or something, you might go, oh, that looks nice together, and then you could use that in your work. So it's not only a way of organising, I also find them inspiring, and I've got them all stacked up on my little cheese box shelving, my bundles. That's a bit of chiffon, but it's a tiny bit, so I'm going to put that in my project bag. You know, or laid in baskets or however, so that they're out and I can see them. I can go in there, they're on open shelves, I can see them. I don't have dust allergies or anything like that. You know, if you did, then maybe that's not the way for you. This is kind of, see, that I call weird stuff. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean, it's beautiful to be weird. I'm sure many of us agree. But I keep that in a separate kind of place. I mean, it's still in a bundle, but yeah, sometimes I just think, oh, I need a bit of weird stuff, and then I know where to look. That's silk. That's also silk. And some of this was what I got out for the Kate the Brave journal. And that's how this basket started, really. It started with stuff for Kate the Brave. It's all creased because of that naughty cat. That's a bit of sari silk ribbon. And I have a place for that in my hair. I'm not going to keep all my entire collection of sari silk ribbon in my hair. I would not be able to move. Oh no, I don't have that much. It's a lovely little bit of onion skin dyed silk, cotton, sheet, so I'll put that in there. But it's really these tiny bits I was after for my little slow stitch booklet. And even that might be nice as well. Some crochet. So this bundle I'm making here at the side is actually too big, really. I like my bundles to be a bit smaller. It's now like that, so I will split it but I'm just making a stack for now. See, that is, I think it's been tea dye, but it's commercial cloth. But I don't mind that in with my eco prints. I'm not that catalogue-y, although I'm a librarian, as you know. It's a bit of off an old pinny of mine. In fact, I think I want that in my coverlet of comfort somewhere, because that's a memory cloth. There's a pocket from a pinny that I made that fell apart. So I'll put that to one side to go into there. Some more bits of lace. I've got a basket for lace in my studio. That's scrim, which counts for me as weird stuff. There's another tiny bit. There's another tiny bit of linen. That's a smallish bit, but I'm aware that I work a lot with strips, so longer bits like that I can get strips from might find their way into my slow stitch book. Tiny bit. Wool. So, you know, maybe this inspires you to go and get one of your baskets that you've been throwing random stuff in and just go through it. And I guess you get a sense of achievement. There's a bit of string which can go in my string collection. I know many of us have string collections. Oops, didn't mean to do that. That bit of string can be used to tie around that bundle or a bundle in a minute. That's a long strip of lovely eco-printed silk. I might have to tear a bit off that and put some of that in my hair. I might. I'll put it in my I've got a dread basket which I showed you earlier. That's some lace that one of you lovely people sent me. So that can go in with my laces. What else did I flick across the room? That bit of silk can go in there. So I've got, this basket is mostly eco because, like I said, it started out as a Kate the Brave basket. But it makes a start for my little book project, and I can always add other things to it. you know, if I want to use specific colours or whatever. Some more sari silk ribbon. I've got a little box for that. I think it's the box I made with you last year with the circles on. It's like a rice bag with no drawstring, joined together with crochet, inspired by Alessandro. If you were here last year, you might remember that. Sari silk. It's a nice bit that can go in there. Maybe some of these tiny scraps of lace can go in there. That's bigger. So yeah, so like I say, it's literally, it's just a starting point, so that you don't have to pick out everything that you want for the whole project at the beginning, and stick to it. That there's no rules basically. That's all thread, so that can go back in my orty tangly nest. Rick rack, go with the lace. These are tiny scraps with stitching on from other things. I love those. I might include those. So yeah, so I mean, I know some people like to do that. They like to plan out the whole project in advance and get everything together for it. I don't. I like to just have a start, and then, because I work, I respond, I make a start and then I respond to what I've done, or what the cloth tells me. We had a whole week last year called Listen to the Cloth, if you remember, if you were here. If you weren't here, you won't remember. Where I respond to what the work is telling me, you know. So I've assembled some bits of cloth, I've started stitching, and then that inspires me to do something else. I no longer plan the whole thing out in the beginning. I used to do diagrams and sketchbooks and all that kind of thing, but I don't enjoy working like that anymore. And there's no right or wrong way. There's just the right way is the way that suits you. And it might take some trial and error to find that way. But one thing I will say is, if you're not happy now, this is paper scraps, so that needs to go in my paper collage scraps. That's backs of sketchbooks that I use for journal spines, so that's got a place as well. What was I saying? I've forgotten. It'll come back, or it won't. No, it's gone. Yeah, it does help as well to have places for things, doesn't it? So if you've got places for things, it's easier to organise. And my places for things are, you know, various random baskets, boxes, drawers, whatever. But you have to find what suits you, and that can take some time. This is the trimming off the bit of slow stitch that I made into my pelmet blind. So that needs to go in a special place. I might keep it with my lace. I know it's not lace, but to me that makes sense. That's where to keep it. That's a pigeon feather. This is a bag of papers. Now these I am going to keep with the Kate the Brave journal, because these are papers that I was using, or I want to continue to use with her. So not those, that's just a big stack of... I made some cards for an exhibition last year, and I cut out some book page and rounded the corners, and then I put slow stitch pieces on them. I do believe they all sold, but I'll keep those in with my... I've got a box where I keep things for card, you know, when I make cards for exhibitions. So I'll keep that with that. But so yeah, so some buttons. So all these papers. And here's some boats and a picture of some flowers from a card that someone sent me. That's just paper that I write on. That shouldn't be in there. In fact, I was looking for that the other day. Tea bag. So all these, I'm going to put them together in a bundle. That's from my friend Maria's exhibition. That shouldn't be in there either. That's some more wax leaves inside there. And a book page that I want to put in my Kate the Brave journal. There's some lovely book pages. I think Helen sent me those. So all that is for Kate the Brave. So that I'm going to make into a bundle and clip it or tie it or something. I might use some of this string because this came off the bundle for the Kate the Brave journal. It's quite long, it's going on and on. I'm going to double it up. I hope I didn't make you go blurry waving my hands about. I don't want to cut it because I don't know yet how I want to use it. The silk chiffon's getting attached to me, so I'm just going to double it up and just do it like a parcel. Just to keep it all together. I could also put it in an envelope or something. I just like the look of these bundles. I'm being careful because there's those leaves in there. So I'm just going to tie it loosely so that it doesn't crease. There we go, and then that can go with my Kate the Brave journal. I've creased a bit at the side there. In my journal drawer, I have a drawer for my journals. I have some of them out and some of them in a drawer. So there we go. Those buttons can go back in the button box. And in the bottom here are all these little scraps which can go in my slow stitch book project bag. And giant paper clips can go in. They have their own little mini drawer and a mini chest of drawers, and they can go in there. I'll put them in that saucer for now, which is overflowing, but there we go. This was some sari silk ribbon. I think Vicky sent me it, I'm not sure, but I just love the colours and the pattern in this. I might actually put some of that in my hair. I'll leave that attached for now. It's attached to some plainer one, a plainer one. I'll put that in my dread basket. It's a teeny tiny scrap of paper, but it's eco print, so it can go in my collage box. Got some lovely leafy buttons that somebody sent me. Can go in with my buttons. And that is a key plate that I was going to use on my journal, but I didn't, and I've got some other key plates hanging up in my studio, so that can go there. So that basket is now quite disgusting, full of dust and Fred hair, but it's now empty. So that feels good. So I can take that outside and give that a good bash to get rid of the fluff and dust. So now I've got this bundle, which actually it's not really too big. I think I'm just going to tie it up as one bundle. It's not too bad. With this bit of string. It's the trouble with silk chiffon, it gets attached to everything. Like so. And that can go in on my shelf in my studio. I'll do a double knot but just loose so I can get it undone again. That will go in my wool box. That will go with my weird stuff. That will go with the silky silks, and that all that will go with the lace. In fact, I'm going to put it all back in the basket just for a minute so I can carry it in there and put it all away, and I promise I'll do that. I promise. Now I'm sorted out. Silky silks. So yeah, this feels very cathartic, this whole thing, sharing all those works in progress with you, talking about the deadlines and everything, getting this project bag ready to go. That goes in the other room, but the journaling stuff lives here in the chest of drawers. Sorry, silk ribbon goes in the other room. Okay, so good job done. Now I want my little felty mat from Mat. Check I've got it in the right place, and I think how are we doing for time? We've got 5 or 10 minutes. Sorry for my chair banging. I'm aiming for an hour always, there or thereabouts. You seem to like that. So I've got this. Now here we go. This, I could not find the circle that I used to make this. I have loads of these different size circle templates. So I've made another one, and I've made it the size, I mean it doesn't matter if they're all slightly different, but I've made it the size of my outer stitching, my red row of running stitch around the outside there. So I'm gonna pin it onto here with my little applique pins. This is how I do. I mean, you can draw on, you know, if you want to. I like to do this, and then I'm not drawing on my cloth and having to get it off again. because it's quite thick, it's getting a bit rumply, but I'm not bothered. I don't mind if the circles are not perfect. It'll be good enough. So I just put a few, and I use these. I've got some smaller ones. Are there any in here? Yes, here we go. That I've been using for years that are peppered with holes. I love this one that says eggs on it. That's my daughter's handwriting from, I don't know how many years old that little paper circle is. But I couldn't find the one I was using for this, so I had to make another one. It probably will turn up. But now I can keep this circle in that bag with all the other bits, and then I'll know that's the circle I'm using. So we need a bit of red thread. I'm not worried if it's not the same colour red throughout. I'm just using my orts, my orty tangly mess. May or may not be enough to go all the way around, we'll see. So I'll thread a needle. So I'll start by stitching the outside row of running stitches that I did on here, because I find when this way I do it, well, if I only wanted to couch, what I would do is I would get a neutral coloured thread, and then I would stitch running stitch around the circle, and then I would get my yarn and couch, get the template off, and then get my yarn and couch over the line that I'd stitched. Which seems a convoluted way when you could just draw a line and couch over it, but that's just my process. It's not for me about how long it takes, it's about enjoying the doing of it. But in this case I'm going to do my first outer line of red stitching, then I'm going to couch my yarn, and then I'm going to stitch my inner line of red stitching. So I literally just come through from the back. And often I will stitch over previous stitching. On that large piece I showed you with the big circle in the middle, that's, you know, the big circle that's going to be put in the middle, I'm doing that background stitching like I showed you, with the full intention of stitching probably loads of circles in different ways over the top of it. So that's why I call it background stitching. You know, you can stitch over stitching. That maybe sounds obvious, but I think some people think that once you've done stitching you can't do more stitching. You know, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, I'll take it out and do something else. No, I would say just try stitching over it, because it's layers. It's like the mixed media idea of layers in the cloth. But you know me, I often say there's nothing that can't be solved by more stitching. And I've just got, I didn't say, did I? I think that's 2 strands, yep. 2 strands of embroidery floss. So I'm obviously not stitching through the paper, I'm stitching just off the edge. Stitching my circle, thinking about the person that this is for. You know, not to get too hippy-dippy about it. I think when you think about the person that you're making for, that feeling kind of comes out in the cloth, in the work, in the stitching, in the piece. But that's just me. You might think that's weird. You might say, yes, Catherine, we get that completely. The peeping to see how far I'm going to go. I'm not sure this is enough thread, but that doesn't matter. And I don't even mind if I have to get a different shade of red, because to me that's all character and interest. Oops. I might just do it. We don't yet know exactly how we're going to put our books together. We're going to work that out when we're there. There's a few of us that make books, so I'm sure between us we can come up with solutions. There will obviously be single pages, so there's many different possibilities, and it's very likely that we won't all do it the same. Now when I'm stitching a circle, when I'm coming back round towards the beginning, I do like to start anticipating how much space I've got left. So I hope you can see. So there's my first stitch, so I kind of go stitch, space, stitch. Yeah, that'll be okay. Just so they fit in. If you just stitch blindly on, you might end up, you know, with a very tiny stitch or a very big gap or something at the end. So I look an inch or so before I get there, and then you can make small adjustments which are less noticeable as you come round. That's my last stitch. That was serendipitous. That was just the right amount of thread. I'm just going to do a double back stitch on the back and cut that off. Right, so get the pins out. So there's my red circle. Can you see? Can you see? So now I need to get my yarn and another bit of red. Stella can hear the voice of one of my neighbours who she loves, not least because she makes a fuss of her and gives her a treat whenever she sees her. So she's going woof and sticking her head out of the cat flap. No, you can't go out. You can't go out to see her. Not today. Well, not now. We saw her this morning anyway when we were in the park. So I'm going to get, this is doubled up apparently. So I often knit with wool double if it's fine wool. So I'm going to get more than enough. You could just work off the ball of yarn, but it'll keep rolling on the floor and, you know, being annoying. So I'm going to get more than enough. I did only do one single thickness, just to make it easier to work with. Get my needle, and with this one I kind of decided this was the way up, and because I wanted the little tails at the bottom, so I think I'm going to do the same with this. I think I want it that way, so I'm going to start down here where I want the tails to be and come through from the back, and I'm going to position it about 1/8 of an inch inside my stitched line, and then I'm just going to go over with my needle, just jump over the yarn, come in the other side, and then take a little step forward and pull through. And then it's annoying in the beginning, but once you get going it's okay. And I'll deal with that tail when I come back round. So I just hold it in place with my thumb, just visualising the gap, and then I go across and a step forward and back and a step forward. And this is not how most people couch. If you've been here a while, you know about my weird couching method, and I know that many of you now do it this way. Most people couch, they jump across and then bring the needle back up on the side where they started from, and on the back you then get little diagonal stitches. I jump across and go forward on the same side, and that's because I saw the result of couching in people's work and I just worked out how to do it myself rather than seeing how to do it properly. But I like this rhythm of this. And I also like that on the back then you get two little parallel lines of running stitch rather than those diagonal stitches. Okay, I'm coming back round to the beginning. So what I'm aiming for is to have the two little tails meeting at the bottom of my circle, sort of there. So I just need to I'm going to hold that in place with my thumb, and I've actually got them crossing, and take a few more stitches just to get me there. Sorry that my thumb's in the way. Right, and now I'm there, I'm going to make a cross over the cross. So I'm going to come up between two of the strands and then go across the cross and in, and then I'm going to come up again between the other two strands, between the other two gaps, and make another cross that way, just to trap those tails down like that. I hope you can see. And I'm going to trim my tails off a bit, like that, and then I'm going to couch the tails down. You could leave them flying in the breeze if you wanted, but I would couch them down. So just the same thing again, Just let them sort of where they want to naturally lay. I don't need to be too controlling of them. And just the same as before, just couch along. To that end, through to the back. And I'm going to work my needle through. I've got my finger there where I know I want to start, up there. I'm just going to work my needle back through the backing cloth. Got just enough, I think. And then come up and couch down that other tail. One more stitch, just enough thread. There we go. Oops. And jump right over for some reason to do the back stitch. I think I thought that tail was, I don't know what I thought. Who knows what I thought? Answers on a postcard. Anyway, so there we go. That is my page. I think I might do something else in the middle there. I think I might just do a red cross in the very middle. I don't think I need any more stitching around the outside. So I need another bit of red. I might have to go into my skeins of red from my log cabin that I just showed you right at the beginning, because I'm using a lot of red in that, and I used some red in my French knots for the coverlet as well. So I do have some vintage skeins in a tin somewhere of red. Otherwise, when I go to my friends in Devises, I shall go to Make, Do and Mend in Devises, which has vintage threads, vintage embroidery threads. I think they're something like 40 or 50p a skein, or if you buy a few, they're even cheaper. I'm just going to do one big cross in the middle, and then I think I'm going to cross the cross, so it kind of mimics the cross of the tails there, and coming up again and just crossing the cross. Like that. There we go. So that's that page done for that person. I'm not revealing the names of the people because I want them to be the first to hear. I'm sure you understand that. That thread's still got a bit of life left in it, so it can go back in the aughts. So there we go. So I'm very, very pleased with that. Thank you so much. Not that you really had a choice, but I'm aware that's bigger than that, but I just need to trim the backing down a bit. We did have a guideline of about 6 inches, and they are virtually 6 inches. I'm sure I'll be forgiven. But yeah, I just need to trim the backing down and then make it all nice and frayed like this one. So they're more or less the same size. So yeah, I'm really pleased that I've sorted out that basket, and in the process I've got myself some scraps in here for this project. So that can all go in there with my little circle and the ready torn background pieces, ready for the next, when I start the next page. And tie that up. It's really clarified my own mind for what I've got to do. I hope it's helped you if you've got kind of project overwhelm going on. I know a few of you have because you've told me recently. And I look forward to Friday 2 weeks time when we do who knows what, when I do who knows what. But I'm very much looking forward to reading your comments, so please do let me know what you think if you like it. Even if you don't, if you miss slow journaling, you know, I can't promise that I'll go back to slow journaling straight away for you, and in fact I almost certainly won't, unless every single one of you says no, we don't like this, we want slow journaling back, then maybe I would. But anyway, I'm wittering now, I'm hungry, I need to go and have my lunch. So thank you. Oh, before I go, I'll just show you my other ring, because quite a lot of you have commented on my rings. This is a little cat and a little mouse chasing each other around my finger. Actually, they're running towards each other, which is sweet, so I like to think that they're friends. and then my butterfly I showed you before. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all your lovely comments under Monday's video about the analytics thing. It really was just an observation. Please don't worry about me. I'm very, very happy. I feel very blessed to have all of you. And thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more Cloth Tales. Bye bye.